Pizza is one of those foods that some people get really uptight about, like unnecessarily uptight about. Which style is best, which toppings are best, which pizzeria is best. Whether it's a lighthearted debate amongst buddies or, you know, a more serious debate turned street fight, conflict is almost sure to arise. But not today. Today we're all gonna be friends. In the city where I'm from, Chicago, two styles reign supreme. Those are thin tavern style and deep dish. As the title of the video states, today we're going to be talking about the latter, Chicago style deep dish pizza. So at the end of the day, whether you think it's casserole or not, around these parts, deep dish is pizza. And of course, pizza comes in many different forms with many different toppings. Today I've chosen to make a classic Italian sausage pie. But if that's not your thing, feel free to explore the endless expanse of other pizza topping options. Okay, let's start by making the deep dish dough. It's sort of more like a pie or a pastry crust rather than an actual dough. You'll see. To make our dough, we'll need bread flour, olive oil, instant yeast, salt, and a bit of cornmeal. The cornmeal's optional, but it does give the crust a nice little extra oomph. In the bowl of a stand mixer or any other bowl, add in all the dry ingredients first. That is 250 grams of bread flour, 25 grams of cornmeal, 5 grams of kosher salt, and 3 grams of instant yeast. Mix that dry stuff around until it's combined and then pour in 75 grams of olive oil and mix again. We need to coat the dry ingredients in the olive oil before we add water to stop the formation of gluten. Gluten formation would just blow things up and make the dough rise, which is not what we want. We need a sturdy yet flaky crust. Once the oil and dry ingredients are roughly combined and look all crumbly like so, pour in 100 grams of warm water and mix until a shaggy dough forms. Cover with plastic wrap and let this all rest or auto-lease for 20 minutes. This step is what's going to give our dough a chance to hydrate. After 20 minutes has passed, snap your dough bowl onto the stand mixer and using the dough hook attachment, knead the dough on speed 2 for 4 minutes. It's totally fine if you need to stop the mixer to push down any dough that wants to climb up, all good. After 4 minutes, cut the motor and let the dough rest for another 4 minutes, and then continue with one more kneading sesh for an additional 4 minutes. That probably sounds confusing, but giving the dough a chance to rest will help it come together easier. Just remember 4, 4, and 4. Stop the mixer when something that sort of resembles a dough forms, then dump it onto the counter. No flour necessary though, because, you know, this dough's pretty fatty. Fatty dough, bro. Just do your best to round out the dough, then plop it back into the covered mixing bowl and set it aside, let it rest for 2 hours. So yeah, this dough is high in fat and low in hydration, which makes it eat sort of more like a biscuit. The fat also helps wick away any moisture from the meat, cheese, and tomato sauce, which is crucial for this heavy hitter. Use the time it takes for the dough to rest to get your other ingredients sorted. So deep dish pizza calls for a chunkier than usual tomato sauce, and to achieve ultimate chunkage, I like to use these. San Marzano Tomatoes. Don't eye roll at these canned beauties. These are super high quality, whole, peeled tomatoes that are picked at the peak of their season, and they're delicious. And yes, I prefer to use whole tomatoes so I can fully control the final texture of the sauce, but feel free to use pre-crushed tomatoes if that's all you have or all you can find. Just stay away from tomato puree or any thin tomato sauces. It's just gonna be too runny for this type of pizza. Blitz up the maters until they're just broken apart. I really dig my immersion stick blender for this, but a few pulses in a Reggie blender should do the trick too. Set a bowl under a strainer and pour over the now crushed tomatoes. Just set the juice aside for Bloody Marys or Bolognese or something. Then pour those drained tomatoes into a bowl. And I should mention, I used about 2 whole cans of tomatoes for this. You might have some leftover sauce, but you know, how are you gonna complain about that? To the tomatoes, add salt, sugar, dried oregano, red wine vinegar, and fish sauce. You know, the fish sauce is optional, but a dash of it plays very well with the umami-rich tomatoes. There's really no need to cook this tomato mixture. It's going to cook and slightly reduce in the oven, so there's no need for that. Okay, cheese time. As for cheese, we got 2 types here. Those being whole milk mozzarella and part-skim mozzarella, both in block form. The whole milk mozz will ensure that our cheese mixture is rich and creamy, while the part-skim helps tame that whole milk, adding some texture and making things a little less greasy. Alright, just one more thing to talk about, our Italian sausage blend. To brush over this sausage recipe would be a shame, and while it does take some time, I think it's worth making. If you're interested in making your own Italian sausage, I will provide a link to my video all about that. But if you'd like to skip over it, that's totally cool too. Lots of grocery stores sell bulk sausage sausage now, but if you can't find that, simply just grab some pre-made Italian sausage and cut the meat out of the casings. A cool part about this pizza technique is that it's done in a cast iron skillet, so there's no need for any special deep dish pan here. I'm using this Lodge 10-inch cast iron pan, and I do prefer a 10-inch, but a 12-inch pan works fine too. You'll just need to spread everything out a little more when you're using a 12-inch pan. Butter crane. Grab a butter crane, aka just like a stick of butter, and rub the inside of the cast iron down. Really get the bottom and the walls. Don't skimp with the butter or your pizza could stick to the pan. Next is an homage to Pequod's Pizza, a famous deep dish spot here in Chicago. We're just gonna sprinkle the bottom and the sides of the pan with crumbled Parmesan cheese. Some of the cheese will bake into the crust, giving the crust some nice additional browning and a beautiful crispy cheesy crunch. After the 2 hours has passed, plop your dough onto the counter. Now we need to press it out so that it just fits into the cast iron. Use the pads of your fingers and the palms of your hands to gently press and pull the dough into a large circle. Flip the dough as necessary to make sure that you're getting a really nice even circle. I would refrain from trying any fancy pizza tosses here because our dough isn't as stretchy as a usual za dough, but I mean, maybe you know something I don't, so have at it. Now we build. Start by laying in our freshly shredded mozzarella cheese, pop it all in, and it looks like a lot because it is. Next, squash the sausage by hand to about 1/3 of an inch or 8.5 millimeters thinness, then lay it over the top of the cheese. Now plop on our tomato sauce until you can't see the sausage anymore, but also remember that you don't have to use the exact proportions that I've included in this recipe. If you want less sauce, that's up to you, Cap. Finish with a little more Parmesan crumble, and then let's pop that straight into a preheated 425 Fahrenheit, 218 Celsius oven for 35 to 40 minutes. When the timer dings, remove that pizza from the oven and let it cool for 10 or so minutes before doing anything. Now you must choose a path. You can either cut your pizza directly in the cast iron, but then you run the risk of scratching your cast iron and dulling your knives. The other option is to remove the pizza from the cast iron whole and cut it out of the pan. My path is sort of a mixture of both. I prefer to remove the pizza from the cast iron, slice it up, then return the pizza to the cast iron. Serving this in a cast iron pan is cleaner, keeps the pizza warmer, and it's just easier to transport. But I mean, who's gonna deny the natural beauty of a naked deep dish pizza? This is a cross-section from a chilled test pizza. It was a bit heavy on the sausage, but I think it's a cool shot and useful to sort of see the anatomy of a pie. Because our crust is made from a high-fat dough, it can repel water and stand up to the sauce and the moisture, which is crucial for this type of za. Serve this stunner piece by piece with a fork and a knife. And I know it seems weird, but trust me, a fork and a knife is how it's done. Alright, so I gotta keep it real. I was never really a big fan of deep dish growing up, but my entire family absolutely loves it, so it was always in the house for special occasions. And though I do still prefer a thin crust tavern style pizza, you know, deep dish has managed to elbow its way into my heart. And I know if you try this one out, you're gonna like it too. So if you do make it, decide to make it at your own crib, tag me on Instagram, whatever, DM me, send me questions, comments if you have them. I love interacting with y'all. And as usual, thanks for watching, and we will see you next week. Double peace.